All right, guys. Welcome back to the channel. I've got 2014 Ford Fiesta here. My front passenger side brake is locked up. Um, if you pump the brakes while you're driving, and the first symptom was every so often I would feel like a little stutter in the brake pedal, and the car would grab weirdly and kind of pull to the right. That was about 3 months ago that started. That has progressed now to the brake actually hanging. Um, if I pump the brakes and I go open up the bleed valve, there's pressure there. Um, so obviously the symptoms there could be, um, an issue with the caliper itself. The rubber hose could collapse and create kind of a check valve that won't allow fluid to go back towards the ABS module. But if I crack at the ABS module, if I crack that bleeder line or that brake line, I get fluid that comes out there too, which tells me somewhere before the ABS module is where that pressure is being held. Now, if you understand how an ABS module works, there's two valves for a wheel for each brake caliper, or each brake, each wheel, and those valves can either hold pressure at the wheel or release pressure from the wheel and bypass that wheel, and that's how an ABS module works. It pulses the brake pressure at the wheel on and off. That's why you feel that stutter when ABS kicks in. But pulling out the scan tool, I have a Maxicom MK808 Bluetooth variant. When the issue is happening, I can go into the Maxicom and open up the valve to bleed, or to relieve pressure from that brake, and it does come off. So I don't know if the issue is in the hydraulic portion of the ABS module or if it's in the electronics, like maybe there's not enough strength on the coil to hold those solenoids open or closed. Buying a new one, it's like, even for a car, this cheap, is like $1,800. So, or not 1,800, it's about $800. And I'm not doing that. This car is, 10 years old. Doesn't have many miles on, I think 120,000 miles. And if you look on the forums, this is a common issue. You see this quite often. Or not quite often, but there's quite a few items out there where the ABS module has a problem. I haven't seen anybody troubleshoot to see if it's a hydraulic issue or electronic issue. I'll show you the module itself. You can see there's a hydraulic block and electronics there if you're not familiar. But so there's no real way to figure out what's happening. Like, is it a solenoid valve that's sticking, or a seat's gone bad? Not that you could fix that, but you probably could, but I'm not going to. Or is it something in the electronics where, the driver for the magnet that opens and closes that solenoid has started to fail or something? I don't know. I mean, fundamentally, it's probably hydraulics, given that I can open that valve. I can open that valve and bleed that brake line manually. But for a long time, it was just kind of dragging. But in the last probably week, it's literally locked up. Like, you can't even, in first gear, you can't even get the car to move. so instead of buying an $800 module, I went on eBay and I bought a used version, same part number, out of Canada. I can't be sure that the electronics is the same. I'm going to have to look at that when I get it open here in a minute. But we're going to swap that out, right? That, of course, puts a ton of air in your brakes. I'm going to use my Maxicom, my Alltel Maxicom 808 Bluetooth to run the bleed process for the ABS module. If you don't have an advanced OBD device or scanner, whatever you want to call it, find one. See if someone will let you borrow one. That makes the process a whole lot easier. The issue you have is if there's air in the ABS module, remember there's all those valves, and air can be behind one of those valves, and a gravity bleed or a vacuum bleed isn't going to work. So keep that in mind. I'm going to use the tool. If you don't have one, try to find somebody that'll let you lend one to you. But you can do it manually. What you could do is go through the normal process of bleeding manually, go out and try to force your ABS module to kick in, like slam on your brakes or something, and get the ABS module to function. And that might push that air down into your brake lines, and then you can rebleed. But it's just a longer process, more involved. And the final comment I have, and I don't know how this is going to end up, is, you know, the ABS module is a computer in the car. I'm not sure if it needs programming, but we are going to find out. And I have the 808. I'm not sure if I can copy settings out of the 808 and put it into a new module in a module swap. I have to look if that's possible. It's actually inside charging and updating. But that can be a problem. I think if that does happen, I'll at least have brakes and I can use the car, but the ABS light may be on and it'll disable ABS functionality. So we'll see. All right, so that's it. Let's get into it. I'm gonna pop the hood and start taking off the brake module. So I've got 2 cans of .4 LV in the house to do this. And yeah, thanks for joining me. I'll put some bookmarks down below in case you want to look at specific sections. And until then, let's try not to break something. All right, we're doing a little hand filming here, so bear with me. But in the Ford Fiesta, I think it's like 2010 or 2012 to like 2018. The brake module's hiding back in here. If you can see it, the 2 lines on the right coming in on the side are coming from the master cylinder, and the 4 lines on top go out to your brakes. So the metal piece here, that's the hydraulic module, and there's a pump for brake booster attachment there, and then the electronics are here, and here's the plug. So I got this whole module, including the bracket, which you can see down at the bottom here is where that's bolted on. The bolts actually come up from the bottom, so kind of make it a bit of a pain to get out, but not too terrible. Just gotta get in there. So all right, well, we will start breaking this apart. I'll try to get the video in here so you can see, but I'm not in the sun, and so it's not going to be terribly easy to see what I'm doing. But essentially, break off those 6 connections, pull this unit out, put the new one in, put the connections on, go through the bleed process. Bear with me. All right, after a little digging, so there's 2 bolts that hold this onto the bracket here, but there's another bracket that goes under it, and there's a bolt in the back left corner way back over here. So what I'm going to do instead is, there's only 2 bolts holding those brackets on, I believe, maybe a third one under there, I can't see it, but those are 10 mil. I'm just going to pull those brackets off. Before doing that, while it's still in place, I'm going to make sure I can get the connector off, and then I'm going to make sure I break all these loose. I don't want to be retching on these without support, so I don't end up messing up the brake lines. But yeah, I'm gonna get to work on that. All right, guys, I didn't want to show you me pulling off all of these connectors. This is the old unit here. What I will tell you is this, though, just from my experience, is when you start, this is how it'll sit inside the car. The car's right here. Get this off first. This main line coming from the master cylinder in the back, that's going to be your hardest one. No matter what you do, you're not gonna be able to do this quickly. So don't be concerned about breaking these loose and having oil. I mean, oil is going to go everywhere, or brake fluid, but don't worry about that too much. I will say there's a lot of different variants of this module out there. Make sure if you're going to buy one online that you absolutely confirm it's the exact unit. What I did was taking a look here at the part number on the motor. You'll see C2405D8, right? And I made sure that I got exactly that same module. And in fact, if you look at the front of this unit too, that is the exact same as that one. Now, that doesn't mean that if this has a VIN stored in it, that it's not going to throw an error and need programming. But there are a bunch of different modules out there. The car I'm driving, it's a Ford Fiesta. It's a standard, right? A manual transmission, and I do not have calipers in the back. I have shoes. So brake drums, not calipers. So this module is set up for that. If you buy the different module where like the ST variants of this, the little sporty versions, they have calipers all around. It's a different unit. I'm not sure if they're compatible. I couldn't find anywhere online if they were, so I bought the exact same thing. And I think I paid $80 shipped out of Canada to me. Came out of probably a wrecked vehicle or something. But just make sure it's a like-for-like swap, or be prepared for some problems. So now I'm going to go ahead and get this put back in and bolt it up, and then we'll start bleeding brake lines. All right. So, oh, and by the way, the bracket, in case you're wondering, it has T-bits, star bits, whatever you want to call them. And let me look here and tell you what size it is, maybe if I can read it. It's a T27 bit. If you're curious, these bolts that hold the bracket in place, there's 3 of them. T27 star bit. And all of the connectors for the brake lines are 12 mil. So I'm just using my little, not the 13 mil, the 12 mils up there. But I got these little task force, they're pretty tiny, but they work in a pinch when you're in a tight spot. So, all right, that's it. I'm gonna get this put in and then we'll go from there. All right, guys, I got her in there and I just lost a wrench. Gotta find where that went. Anyway, got her in there. When you pull it out, what you can do is tip it with the motor down and the electronics box up. You can then pull it through here, and then that electronics box, which is the widest piece, will fit up around here, and then you can turn it and pull it out with the bracket on it. It's much easier without the bracket, but the bracket adds some space. So it's back in, tightened up on the bolts. Now I got to get the lines in. I left the old lines that had been crimped off in there just to make sure I don't end up with a bunch of junk in there. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and get the connector back on. All right, guys, I don't know how many Ford Fiesta ABS modules you've changed, but it's my first. So I had to loosen the bolts holding on the unit. The unit is kind of misskewed, and trying to get these lines threaded in is just not happening. So I took the bolt on the back wall. I don't know if you can see my finger back here off, and I loosened the one down below here for the bracket. That way I can move it around a bit, make sure I don't cross thread those connections. So anyway, just a heads up. Also, all those brake lines are 13 millimeters, not 12 millimeters. All right, guys, it's in. If you want to know, it probably took an hour and a half. These brake lines are hard, and getting them to line up and start on the threads is a pain in the rear end. It takes a long time, just letting you know. But got it in. I've got the bolts back in the brackets. I had to take those out to wiggle it around and get the threads to start here and there. Got the connector back in and snapped back in place. If you're not sure how to open this, there's this little push tab in here, and then it lets the clip out. While you push that down, it will pull itself out automatically. So just be aware of that. And then once you get to the bottom, it'll come apart. But it's in, and now let's put the battery back on and see what the scanner shows us. All right, so got the battery hooked up, got the key turned on. This is MaxiCom MK808 Bluetooth, so no wire. It's got the Bluetooth module. We're going to go into service. We're going to select brake bleed here and select Ford and let it load up. And auto select, read the VIN, okay. Give it 20 minutes. And I have 1,222 or 122,000 mile, 800 miles on the car. Fiesta TIVCT 1.6 liter 50 state, not a California. That's the correct car. Loading. And I believe this is going to make us start up on the front left. If you do it manually, you'll see a lot of people tell you to do it from the back, but when you're trying to bleed out the ABS module, you want to do it up front so that there's the least amount of distance. Anyway, all right, so I don't know if you can read this, but read the vehicles in park, apply the parking brake, voltage over 10. After it's complete, perform a manual bleed. So this is only going to dump out the ABS. So, okay, ignition switch is on. Okay. Depress the brake pedal and hold. Press OK to continue. Okay. I just heard the pump kick on. Now, because we had those lines all open, I'm going to go and make sure I topped off the reservoir. But because we're pumping a bunch of fluid through and there was air in those lines, I'm going to just make sure here we're down just a scotch. Yeah, we're good. All right. Get back in here. That sun is crazy. I don't know if you can hear that pump turning on here and there, but it's building up pressure in the system, trying to push all the air through it. And it says it's successful. So that's it. So this particular model doesn't run through the brake pad by brake pad bleeding. So it's just trying to push fluid through there. So I'm going to go and start bleeding brakes. All right, guys, it's been a couple hours. I have bled all the brakes, made sure I got all the air out of the system. Using the Maxicom 808, I ran MK808. I ran the ABS module bleed procedure. I believe that just flows fluid back and forth from the master cylinder. I didn't, bleeding brakes. If you want me to do a video, put a comment below, but pretty simple. There's a couple ways to do it. The one-man method is, I don't know, not a fan of that. I always like to have somebody. You can try a vacuum system. I have this Mighty Vac here that works about as well. It's not useful. I mean, it has more air leaks than the Hindenburg does. It does work. I use that to start just because I had to pull a bunch and just to make sure I started at the front left wheel and pulled a bunch of fluid just to make sure that the whole system was good, or the whole ABS module was flushed in case the air that was in the lines between the master cylinder and the ABS module. But then going around, I just go the old process of hooking up a tube, sticking it in a bottle, and having someone pump. I mean, it's the fastest way, I think. They got all sorts of vacuum and automated systems, you know, but no one's got time or money for that. So anyhow, had a couple old lug nuts that were stuck. Had to break out the old manual bar here instead of the DeWalt. That's the 961, I believe, kind of mid-range. So I had to put some new ones on. They were already on the front, but I hadn't put them on the back yet. So went ahead and did that. That's it. Oh, I do have a code, and the code is a VIN mismatch, which I knew was possible. My Maxicom 808 Bluetooth does not have the relearn. There's some of the Autel systems that you can plug in the old module. The Autel will grab the data out of it and then overwrite the new module, or in this case, the ABS module. But mine doesn't do it, and I don't even know if the ones that do, actually would do the ABS module. I don't know. So I'm gonna have to take it by somewhere and get it swapped. So anyway, that's it. I drove it around. It seems all right. What I might do is drive it for a couple days and then come back out and try to bleed the brakes again, just in case there's a little bit of air in there. The brakes feel fine, but I don't have ABS or anti-skid at the moment. So, you know, I'd rather have brakes that work than having anti-skid. So anyway, that's it. If you have any questions, comments, thoughts, complaints, something I could have done better, let me know. I will say, if you're doing this, putting those freaking brake lines back on that ABS module suck. So good luck. And until next time. Oh, I did want to show you one last thing. Here's what the brake fluid that came out of the car looked like. A little bit old. My daughter says it looks like pickle juice. Anyway, and then this is the old bottle. They changed their labeling, but Pentosan.4LV is what I'm using. And that is because this is a manual, and brake fluid also runs your clutch. So anyhow, thanks for hanging out. Like I said, questions down below, comments, thoughts, complaints, let me know. And yeah, if you ever want to come by and help me clean up after a job like this, you know, this is always the worst part. All right, take care.